could it be? For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to this LouieTeeNetwork exclusive limited series, The Reign of Terror, chronicling the 23 years of pure hell that former Washington Redskins football team and Commanders owner Daniel Snyder has put this fan base through. We are now on Chapter 8, the 2006 season. And what a disappointing season 2006 was. It was so unfulfilling. After what had transpired in 2005 and all of the anticipation for 2006, the offseason was interesting to say the least. We did not know at the time what fruit the 2006 offseason would bear, but they planted a ton of seeds. One in particular we were not happy about. We'll get to that here in a second. But all the other moves, okay, let's see how they work out. Wasn't really too excited about some of what they gave up to have some of these moves transpire, but that's what this franchise had done since Daniel Snyder had taken over. Snyder was wasting draft picks left and right. He was dishing out money left and right. As a matter of fact, going into the 2006 offseason, we were $20 million over the cap. Something to that effect, 15, 20, 25, I don't remember, something significant. But, that's when I started to believe less in the cap, when you see how they were able to maneuver, because we never had any money, but we always were signing players. So there was always a way, where there's a will, there's a way. Now, eventually, it's going to come back to bite you in the ass if you keep pushing money down the road and kicking the can down the road. Eventually, you can't keep kicking. You're going to have to make some tough decisions. But nonetheless, somebody reminded me of something from the 2005 season that really started back in the 2003 season. And I totally forgot about this, spaced on this. And it was the contract dispute of LeVar Arrington with Daniel Snyder in particular in the Washington Redskins organization. So after the 2003 season, if I'm not mistaken, LeVar Arrington signed this massive extension, right? It was like an 8-year extension, 60 some odd $1 million. It was a massive contract at the time, as you could imagine. And this guy started out his career like gangbusters, man. 2 second-team All-Pros, 3 Pro Bowl seasons already. He was killing it, right? So he signs the deal, and on the final provision of the contract, Washington left out $6.5 million in bonus money. And because they had agreed upon that previously, they just assumed that it was in the contract. His agent didn't look over the final draft of the contract. They signed it. Washington got over on them. And LeVar Arrington, as you would imagine, as you would be if you were in his situation and shoes, he was salty. He wanted his $6.5 million that he was promised. And it was supposed to be, bonus money that he should have received. But they got over on him. His agent didn't check that final version. He just assumed that everything they had discussed was in the contract, and it wasn't. And so LeVar went to court. There was litigation. It turned ugly. Ultimately, it led to what happened in the offseason of 2006, which was LeVar Arrington being released. Now, his play had tailed off a bit. He had dealt with some injuries, but also he was frustrated and he felt like they had stole from him, and he wasn't getting along with the coaching staff, in particular, Greg Williams. And so things kind of went south. The money situation made it a lot easier for him to reconcile in his brain that he didn't want to be in Washington. And so they released him after the 2005 season. So LeVar Arrington was gone, and they had to move on. He ended up paying the team back $4.4 million to kind of get out of his contract. It was a mess. I'll just say that. But nonetheless, you forge forward, and anybody that knows Joe Gibbs from the 1.0 days knows that he takes losses very, very hard, right? He enjoys He suffers from losses more than he enjoys the victories. And again, that is the mark of a true competitor. I told you I'm the exact same way. It's almost hard sometimes to acknowledge, bask in, and enjoy the wins because you're so concerned and focused on not taking the L's. And so Joe took the 0-5 loss against Seattle in the playoffs to heart. And he put a lot of the onus on himself as to why they lost the game. His offense was antiquated. They didn't have enough talent. Now, the not having enough talent thing was real, okay? But they didn't go about it the right way in fixing it. So many changes were made. It didn't feel like the same team going into the 06 season, right? The defense wasn't the same. The offense clearly was not the same. And this team overall was not the same. And it didn't have the same feel as 05. It didn't even have the same feel as 04, the first year Joe got here. It just felt vastly different. And so 06 featured Ryan Clark being let go. Put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. Matt Bowen, who was also a starting safety on the team the year before, being let go. I talked about LeVar Arrington being released from the team. There was no more Patrick Ramsey. He was gone. There were so many other moves that were made that really ate away at the core of this team. But in particular, those were the ones that stood out the most. Bill Musgrave was also gone, who came in the year prior as the new QB's coach, but also helped install the shotgun formation. Out with him, in with new offensive coordinator, Al Saunders. Now, Joe felt like the offense needed a boost. It needed to be more modernized. Again, he felt like his offense was stuck in the 80s and that they needed a total overhaul. That was the furthest from the truth. And I've heard Chris Cooley say this a million times, and I couldn't agree with him more. They had established an identity, what they stood for, who they were. And Joe's offense was physical. It was smash mouth. It was in your face. No, it wasn't built to score 50 points, 30 points every single week. But it was who they were. It was what they were going to establish on a week in, week out basis. You knew what you were going to get from Washington. And, in the event that teams started to come up, play the run, you could get Santana Moss over the top for a touchdown. You could get big plays in the passing game and end up scoring points, as we saw in that 2005 season, where we had 35 points, 2 straight games, and ended the season with 3 straight 30-point efforts. So I think those playoff performances where you didn't do anything on offense, the lowest yardage output in a playoff win at Tampa, 102 yards of total offense, and then the following week stinking it up against Seattle and only scoring 10 points, really sent Joe to the drawing board and forced him to make a decision. And I thought ultimately was the single biggest mistake that he made in his tenure. I thought the 2 biggest mistakes that he made in his tenure both happened in the offseason of 06. And it was bringing in Al Saunders, getting rid of his offense, and trying to go to a more modern approach, which didn't fit the team that he had built and put together, which included drafting Jason Campbell the year before in the first round. Like, Jason Campbell didn't fit in Al Saunders' offense. He fit in Joe Gibbs' offensive scheme. So much fundamentally was wrong with the decision that Joe just made in bringing in Al Saunders. Not that Al Saunders' offense didn't work. It's just that it didn't fit the personnel that you had gathered and put together. Then the other mistake was getting rid of Ryan Clark. So take that pen out. Now, let's talk about Ryan Clark. Ryan Clark signed a 4-year, and he wanted to stay in Washington. Him and Sean Taylor were best of friends. He wanted to remain here in Washington, and he was a damn good football player. And he signed a 4-year, $7 million contract with $1.25 million guaranteed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I repeat, 4 years, $7 million, 1.25 of it fully guaranteed. Meanwhile, Washington replaces him with Adam Archuleta on a 6-year, $30 million deal, with 10 of it fully guaranteed. Make it make sense. We'll come back to Adam Archuleta and the impact of that stupid move. There was no more Walt Harris on the roster as well. So you lost a damn good nickel and boundary corner. And Carlos Rogers got hurt in 2006. And so he wasn't even on the roster. I think Rogers tore his ACL in camp or in the preseason. So there was no Walt Harris to step in. So Ide Jamal and Mike Rumpf and all of these bums are out at the cornerback position. Your linebacker position is now decimated. 2 years ago, your linebacker position was Marcus Washington, LeVar Arrington, and Antonio Pierce, one of the best groups in all of the National Football League. Fast forward 2 years, Antonio Pierce is gone. You let him walk for next to nothing in 2005. And now LeVar Arrington is gone, and it's Warwick Holdman, Lamar Marshall, who actually was playing well for us. And you still had, they drafted Rocky McIntosh in 2006 because we didn't have a first round pick because you traded it away to trade back into the first round in 2005 to get Jason Campbell. And you still had Marcus Washington. So that linebacker group was uninspiring. Your secondary now stinks because there's no Ryan Clark. There's no Matt Bowen. There's no Walt Harris. Okay? And Carlos Rogers is out for the season. So the secondary is decimated. It looks totally different. You got Archuleta out there stinking it up. You got Ide Jamal posing as an NFL cornerback playing snaps for you. There is no nickelback. Safety isn't as good as it was. It's just Sean Taylor back there now. And Sean Springs. Those are your only two reliable starters from the year before. And on the defensive line, let's talk about what else they did. So, free agent-wise, they brought in Andre Carter as a defensive end, which wasn't a bad move. They brought in, as I mentioned, Adam Archuleta, signed him to one of the richest contracts at the safety position at that time in NFL history. And they brought in Antoine Randall L., who we would later nickname Antoine Randall Fell, because we brought him in here to be a dynamic punt returner. If you recall, the Steelers were coming off of winning the Super Bowl in 2005. Randall L. Was instrumental in the success of the Steelers. Is not only a punt returner, but a receiver and a guy that could do a lot of things. Remember, Randall L. was a former college quarterback, so they would throw him into trick plays and have him throw the football from time to time. And so there was a lot of value, we thought, initially in getting a guy like Antoine Randall L. What we would later find out is Randall L. came here and had no intentions of being a dynamic punt returner. Those days were behind him. He now wanted to focus on being a receiver, which he was, marginal at best at being. And he just didn't really add a ton of value to the team like we thought he was going to. So that was a lot of wasted money. Because we literally got nothing out of him as a punt returner. Zero. Zilch. All he would do was catch the ball and fall down, which is why we called him Antoine Randall Fell. And then Washington decided to trade away picks, as Daniel Snyder had done so often in this tenure, just throwing away draft picks because he didn't value them. And so he traded for backup quarterback Todd Collins, which wasn't a bad move. He traded for Brandon Lloyd, which in the moment I was excited about, because I thought, if you look at the receivers, and this is why it was so frustrating that Joe went away from his offense. If they would have just done what they did offensively, the moves that they made to bring in Todd Collins as a backup quarterback, to bring in Brandon Lloyd via trade, even Antoine Randall, even if they had done all of those things and just left the offense the way it was, we would have been fine. We would have been a football team to be reckoned with. Obviously, I still think we would have had deficiencies defensively and we still would have struggled, but we would have had more of a fighting chance because we would have been more efficient offensively. But by making the switch to Al Saunders' offense, you made everybody unsure of what it is exactly they were supposed to be doing, and you're asking the quarterbacks who weren't really, up to par with Brunell, who was at this point 97 years old. Jason Campbell going into year 2, still trying to figure things out. Now it's the second year of his career with learning his second offense in his career. So you got the young quarterback's head spinning, and you just brought Todd Collins here. He was in Buffalo in the same offense for 55 years, it felt like. He might have gone to Kansas City. Maybe that was after Washington. He went to Kansas City, but he pretty much played in the same offense his entire career. And so now you got him coming to Washington. He's got to learn a new scheme. So I think he might have been familiar with Al Saunders' scheme. I'm not sure if he was or not, but that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is we gave up draft picks for Todd Collins. We gave up draft picks for Brandon Lloyd, which I was not upset about. But this is the one that everyone focused in on, and rightfully so. We traded a second-round pick for T.J. Duckett because we thought the Philadelphia Eagles, Dan Snyder, Joe Gibbs, they thought that the Eagles were going to go and trade for T.J. Duckett. So instead of allowing the Eagles to have at it, they traded a second-round pick for T.J. Duckett. How stupid can you be? So, this is how negligent they were, specifically Dan was, with draft picks. You're giving away do you understand a second-round pick? Are you insane? Do you know what kind of a stir that would cause today if he did something as foolish as trading a second-round pick for a backup running back? That's insane, right? So, yeah, Daniel Snyder did that. He traded a second-round pick for T.J. Duckett, who was the backup to Warrick Dunn in Atlanta at the time. Insanity. So it was a crazy offseason, and it had you asking yourself, what in the hell did we just do? We look nothing like the 05 team, but you know what? Blindly, we follow Joe anywhere. We go into the season thinking, all right, let's see what we got. No Ryan Clark, no Walt Harris, no Carlos Rogers, no Matt Bowen, no LeVar Arrington. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. Don't worry about it. All right? Brand new offense. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. We were not fine. And for the first time in Joe's second act, we didn't win the first game of the season. In 04, his first game back, beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In 05, we won the first 3 games of the season before suffering our first defeat. In 06, we started the season off 0-2, including an easy beating at the hands of the Dallas Cowboys in week number 2 on the road. And so this season is off to a very ominous start. You get to week 3, and I'm not feeling really good about the season at this point, but you're going to Houston. They suck. If you can't beat the Texans, it's going to be a long season. Saddle up. Brunell goes to Houston, and he sets a then NFL record. I don't know if it still stands today. It may not. I think someone's eclipsed that mark. But he goes to Houston and completes the first 22 passes of the game without an incompletion. Now, if you watch the game like I did, it was a lot of dink and dunk city. Now, there were a couple of passes down the field, but for the most part, it was dink and dunk city, okay? Wide receiver screen, slant, hitch, everything was like 7 yards and into the line of scrimmage. But, as opportunities came, he did hit some passes down the field. Super efficient, as you could, clearly see, because he started the game off completing his first 22 passes. Super efficient day. Didn't turn it over. We go over there and exercise, some early season demons. We win the game, and you start to say to yourself, maybe we just found something. The following week was by far and away the most exciting game, and to me, the game that stood out the most the entire season. It was the most fun I had in the 06 season, and that was the Week 4 contest at home against Jacksonville. I remember this clear as day. It was in the 4:30 slot, the afternoon game, and this is a fun one, man. So, Brower and Leftwich and the Jaguars, coached by our defensive coordinator, Jack Del Rio, come to town, and it's a shootout. And Santana Moss is in his bag. He catches a little comeback from Brunell, spins out of it, takes off, and the patented Tana man spin is in full effect. He gets a block down the field, one man to beat, grabs him, Tana spins on him, and Johnson to the end zone. And it's just, everybody erupts. So it was that kind of day offensively for Washington, where it's going to be heavy Santana, get Clinton involved, little Chris Cooley, and Tana Man scores another touchdown down inside the 10. And we had a chance to win the game late. John Hall makes a field goal to give us, I want to say, yes, because the final score, I think, was 33-27, or no, it was 36-30, because the score was 30-30 in overtime, and then we scored the touchdown to win. So we go up 30-27 on a John Hall field goal late in the game, and of course this defense wasn't any good, so they give it right back. And Jackson, and when he kicked the field goal, I think it was either right at 2 minutes or just under 2 minutes to go in the game to give us the 30-27 lead. Jacksonville gets right back in the field goal range and ties the game at 30, all to go to overtime. And then Santana makes one of my favorite Santana Moss plays of his career. I still don't know how Brunell fit this thing in down the sideline. Tana gets up the left sideline. Brunell squeezes it in between the corner and the safety who's coming over. The safety was going for the pick. If the safety went for the kill shot on Tana, this play never happens. But he was being greedy. He went for the football. Tana jumps up, snatches it away from the safety. The corner kind of, bumps into the safety who's going for the football because Tana cut across that safety. And off to the races he goes for the game-winning score. I just remember the TV shaking. I don't know if I've experienced that very many times. I think in 2012 when we beat Dallas in week 17 to win the division, I felt my TV shake. That was one of the few times I've ever felt my TV shake from a play. And that Santana Moss catch at home against Jacksonville made my TV shake. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about that one, because you don't win dramatically in overtime like that very often. I remember that game as well being a game where Reggie Williams was balling on us because the Jaguars had picked, and I used to play with them on Madden at the time because they had some big receivers. Fred Taylor was on their team still. Their defense was really good at the time. Rasheem Mathis, and they had the big boys in the middle, John Henderson, and and Darius Stroud, or Marcus Stroud, and John Henderson inside as the two defensive tackles. They were really good defensively. And they drafted this big kid out of Washington, 6'4", 230 pounds at receiver, and he kicked our ass in that game. Reggie Williams, I remember him. He caught a touchdown early in the game, and then the second touchdown of the game he caught, He catches the ball. Sean Taylor lights him up in the end zone. There's no way. Like, if this is a regular receiver, if he's not built like a tight end, this dude's 6'4", 230. If he's not built like a tight end, it's incomplete. Sean decleats him. His helmet goes flying, and he holds on to the ball for the touchdown. And I just remember him shaking his little dreads. He had little dreads at the time. He was just starting to grow his hair out. And his helmet popped off, and he goes, shaking his dreads, and I'm like, respect. Because Sean lit him up. And he scored the touchdown. He got up shaking his dreads. Respect, bro. Respect. So it was a fun game. But at the end, we came out with the victory. That's what made it as fun as it was. So now you're 2-2 after the tough start, and you're thinking, okay, here goes Joe, turning things around. Maybe some of these moves that they made aren't as bad. And then the season hit this total nosedive, and we reverted back to where we were the first 2 games of the season, and we started losing game after game after game after game. And there was a point in the season where I realized we're not very good. And for me, that game was the Tennessee game, and I think that was week 7? 6. It was 6. It's week 6. So I think it had to be 6 because yeah, it was 6. It was 6 because I went to this game. Vince Young's rookie season in the league. And the running joke in those days was Washington couldn't beat rookie quarterbacks for whatever reason. And Vince Young came into the league his rookie season, and he was playing well, but they weren't all that great. But Vince was making plays. And I was like, if we can't beat the Titans, I'm not saying it's going to be a long year, but because they weren't garbage like the Texans, but if we can't beat the Titans at home with a rookie quarterback in Vince Young, yeah, I don't think we're going to be very good this year. And we jumped on those boys early. It's 14-3. We're doing what we want to do to them. I'm feeling good about it. And then we got stagnant on offense. Vince and company moving the football. They blocked a punt. And they kicked a late field goal to take the lead 24-21, 25-22, something to that effect. It was a 3-point lead. I just know that. 26-23, something like that. And we get the ball back, but we don't do anything with it. We lose the game. And I just remember Jeff Fisher being so amped. This is when this is way before the Robert Griffin III trade. I couldn't stand Jeff Fisher. This is the game that he came on the field, and I don't know if he had a vendetta against somebody on the Washington side because he was always being petty when it came to us. And maybe this is something that he did all the time when he won games. I don't ever recall him doing it in any other game, but he comes on the field right after they win, and he does this shit right here. Throws up a dub. What is this about, right? I'm at the game. I see him do it. I'm pissed off. We just lost to Vince Young, who's a rookie. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay. We're going to be trash this year. And at this point now, I'm like, what are we waiting on, man? Let's see what J-Cam has. Like, what are we doing? Why are we still going down this Mark Brunell hole? It's leading us nowhere. It's a dead end. And we go into our bye week. We're 2-5. We come off the bye week. We get a big win against Dallas at home. This was a fun one because this is the early stages of the Romo era in Dallas. As a matter of fact, I think this is the first year of the Romo experience in Dallas, 06. And he came in and he stroked us at FedEx. And he was throwing dart. And this is the TO version of Dallas as well. Remember that. So it's Terrell Owens, it's Patrick Creighton, and company, So they're playing well, but we're hanging right there with them. They we make so Dallas has a chance to beat us. We got a chance to kick a field goal that'll give us the lead with about, I think, under a minute to go in the game, right? Like 50 seconds or something like that. And Nick Novak, who's taken over for John Hall, who had kicked his last kick for Washington because he couldn't stay healthy. Like John Hall's first year in Washington was excellent, which was the last year of Spurrier, 03, was excellent. He dealt with injuries in 04. 05, he was healthy, but he dealt with some injuries, but he made it through the season. 06, he was injured, and that was it. And I remember really liking John Hall. I went to the fan appreciation in 06, if I'm not mistaken, and I got his autograph, Clinton Portis's, Santana Moss's autograph, and I talked to John Hall for like 5 minutes. Cool dude. I remember talking to him about his black fingernail polish. He had black fingernail polish on. And just a cool dude, man. But he couldn't stay healthy. So now Nick Novak is kicking for us. And he had stunk it up the week before. We had just signed him the week prior. Indianapolis kicked our ass. He missed 2 field goals in that game. And so he was already 0 for 2. He missed from 49 the week before against Indy. And then he missed from 49 against Dallas at the end, which would have given us a 22-19 lead. So, of course, Romo takes that miss, the great field position that came with it, got him in the field goal range. And I remember Jason Witten smoking Adam Archuleta up the seam and Romo doing one of his patented feathery, soft drugstore cotton loft jobs right over the middle of the field to Jason Witten over Adam Archuleta, our $30 million man in coverage, to put them in great field goal range. This is like a 35-yard field goal or something. The game's over. And Van Jack's going to make this. We're going to lose another heartbreaker to the Cowboys. So, we had just signed Troy Vincent because our safety depth stunk, and we were all kinds of banged up. And Troy Vincent at this point is like 89 years old. He's on his last legs in his career. And somehow, some way, the Cowboys' field goal protection breaks down, and Troy Vincent comes scot-free on the game-winning kick, and he blocks it. And he goes to pick it up. He can't pick it up. He fumbles it and kicks it away. And of all people who could pick it up, the best person on the field to pick it up scoops it up. And he, at first, couldn't pick it up cleanly, but then he circles back, picks it up, and then does this big U-turn. And as he's making that U-turn, one of the Cowboy offensive linemen grab his face mask, but doesn't deter Sean. You know, Sean Taylor's got the rock. He's returning his puppy, and now all of a sudden he's got a convoy of blockers. He's weaving and, dipping and dodging, weaving in and out of traffic, and all of a sudden he's on the plus side of into Dallas territory, gets tackled around the Dallas 45-yard line or so. You tack on the 15 from the face mask on the return, and now you're at the Dallas 30-yard line. Time has expired because when Vanderjagt went to kick the field goal, there's only 9 seconds left. So there's no time left on the clock, but because there was a penalty, there is an untimed down. So now the guy that was previously the GOAT, Nick Novak, who just missed a 49-yarder that was going to cost us the game, now has a chance for redemption. And he comes out on the field for a 47-yard field goal. He kicks it. This shit looks like it's going far right, just like the last kick he missed from 49. And somehow it just draws inside that right upright, and it's good, and we win, and it felt so good. It was vindication. It was the last time I would really feel good the entire 2006 season. And so we get the 22-19 victory. But honestly speaking, we're not a good football team, and it's evident, and we're not together. This feels like the 2000 season. If you're a Redskins fan, this feels disjointed like the 2000 season. Like, you brought all these hired guns in here. The team the year before made it to the playoffs, won a playoff game. You felt good about it, and then you made all these changes, and it ate away at team chemistry. and it ate away at all of the promise that the season before brought. And that's what '06 felt like to me. Felt like 2000 all over again. And so the last game that mattered to me was the Tampa game. And I told you, it seemed like we were playing Tampa every single year. And not because this game had any relevance, not because Tampa was good or we were good. They had Bruce Gradkowski at quarterback, for God's sake. Like, the Buccaneers sucked. But J-Cam finally got inserted into the lineup. Joe had seen enough of the Mark Brunell experiment. There was no P-Ram to slide in now. It was Jason Campbell's turn now. We're turning it over to you. Let's see what you got, young fella. And he played well on the road at Tampa. And, you know, unfortunately, it wasn't good enough for a victory. But I thought he showed well in his first start. And the rest of the season was all about Jason Campbell's development, honestly. I was there in the house on a Saturday night. I told you guys about this already. Week 17 at home. Tiki Barber's final NFL regular season game at the time. He had talked about retirement all year, and so that's what all the media was focusing in on. The Giants needed this game to make the playoffs. They win, they were pretty much in. They lose, and they could be out. Meanwhile, our season was done a long time ago. Our season was done 2 months ago. But here we were playing for pride, trying to see if we could take a team in the division down with us because we were already going down in flames. And I just remember Tiki Barber unleashing hell against us. It was so disheartening. They were up 27. Eli, and this is the part that you remember I told you in 05 we lost to the Giants 36-0. Eli stunk, right? But Tiki Barber torched us. This is exactly, Eli didn't do anything in this game again, but Tiki did everything. You know, Tiki had over 200 yards rushing. I just remember every one of those bat-breaking runs in that game. You know, they were up 27-7, and then we fought back. You know, Jason Campbell, Liddell Betts, because Clint Portis was out, you know, for the season pretty much already. We just kept fighting, man, but we just didn't have enough to stop Tiki Barber that night. We just didn't. So, unfortunately, we lose that game, and we wrap up the season 5-11, and all of the hopes, all of the expectations that we had coming into the season, or after the 05 season, before all of the shit they did in 06 happened, was gone. Like, that feeling after the loss to Seattle in the divisional round, that, oh my God, we're back, we're going to the Super Bowl, that felt like 15 years ago. It just happened a year ago, but it felt like 15 years ago. Again, 06 felt like 2000 to me. This was not the same team I watched find a way to get it done week after week in 05. And it was because of all the changes that they made. They gutted the roster. They made stupid moves. They didn't retain players that they should have. Instead, they went after higher priced items that weren't as good as the stuff that they already had. Because of so much of the money that they were spending, they couldn't retain some of the guys that they should have. But even then, you say that Ryan Clark signed for $7 million, and you went out and spent $30 million on Adam Archuleta, his replacement. Make it make sense. It doesn't. 06 was one of the most disappointing seasons at that time that I could remember. The only thing that gave me hope is that Joe was still here. And J-Cam didn't look terrible at the end of 06. And so you had something to build on there. And you just hope you get healthy, you get Portis back. You build a little bit of continuity with this Al Saunders offense. And you kind of settle in, and you hope that next year's better. But I felt like Snyder did it all over again. He did the same shit. Like, he never could let us enjoy success. He needed to put his fingerprints all over the success. Similar to Jerry Jones, his idol, right? Every time the Cowboys won big, Jerry Jones didn't feel like he got enough credit. He needed to interject himself, i.e. getting rid of Jimmy Johnson to bring in Barry Switzer, right? Stupid. The Cowboys would have won like 3 more Super Bowls if they would have kept Jimmy Johnson. And, you know, that's a whole nother conversation for another day. 99 season was magical. It felt like we were on the cusp of doing something big. Snyder comes in, gets his fingerprints all over the roster, F's everything up. We end up going back to mediocrity. We don't make the playoffs until 05 again. We make it. Feels like 99 all over again in 2005. You're feeling good. And now this time it's a little different because you got Joe Gibbs on your side. Shit's going to be even better in 06. And then Snyder gets his fingerprints all over the damn franchise again. All over the roster. Trades away a bunch of picks. Trades for players. Just dismantles what was a core group of players that were helping ascend this football team. He dismantles all of that, and oh no, we suck again. That's what it's like being a Redskins fan. You can't enjoy success because your owner wants a piece of the credit. So that's where we leave off. At this point, your hands are in the air. You're like, all right, Joe, what do you got for us, man? I'm at a loss right now. What do you got? And 07 would be the greatest mixture of despair and hope at the same time, followed by despair again. The 07 season is the ultimate roller coaster ride. We'll get to that on Chapter 9. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on The Reign of Terror, chronicling the last 23 years of pure hell under former owner Daniel Snyder. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
LouieTeeNetwork.